Tonight, delivering a plan that could end the Canada Post strike and force postal workers back on the job.
Canadians are rightly fed up.
The union calls the move an assault.
So we're really disappointed that the minister chose to do this today.
As Canadians are caught in the middle. Plus, soaring costs, how the CEOs of Canada's big airlines justify fees for carry-on bags.
The growth of airlines such as WestJet and Porter and the entry of Flair have profoundly changed the market dynamic.
Also, celebrations in Syria and a new call to bring Canadian prisoners there back home.
We have decided to disregard the international rules-based order.
I see in the rearview mirror this black truck just coming at me.
The eyewitness account of a driver who blew through a border crossing into the United States. And a calculated victory.
Michael Jordan!
Look at that! Look at that!
Win.
Look at that!
Meet the man who won the XL World Championship.
I very much have wanted to win this for a while.
CTV National News with Heather Butts. Reporting tonight, Todd Vanderhayden.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It's taken 4 weeks, but the federal government is now intervening in the Canada Post workers' strike. The federal Labour Minister laying out a plan today to get employees back on the job and get the mail moving once again. CTV's Garrett Barry has the details on this new development in the Labour action.
Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon says after a month of negotiations, things are only getting worse.
It became very clear to me that we were in a total impasse.
So he's called in the Canada Industrial Relations Board. If it finds a settlement isn't likely by the end of the month, it could force Canada Post employees back on the job as early as next week.
We don't do this every day, but for reasons of immediacy, we're acting now. And for reasons of sustainability for Canada Post and its employees, we've put this process in place.
That process, a second part of McKinnon's plan, is an industrial inquiry commission that will study why negotiations fell apart.
So we're calling a timeout?
I feel like he's treating us like children and it's time out. That's for sure.
The Canadian Union of Postal Workers says the minister's move undermines all unions and their ability to freely negotiate. This back-to-work plan, if executed, would extend the last Canada Post collective agreement until May of next year. On the picket lines today, immediate disappointment.
Our demands were not a lot. We were asking for a living wage. We were asking for safe working conditions.
Business groups say it may be too little too late. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business estimates that small business owners have collectively lost about $100 million every day since this strike began.
We had one example in Prince Edward Island of a business who had to store 270,000 catalogs, which they couldn't get out the door, and so they had to find the rental space for that.
As for Canada Post, it says it's reviewing the minister's latest steps and is getting ready to reopen post offices as soon as possible. Todd.
All right, CTV's Garrett Barry in St. John's. Talk about U.S. tariffs that could be on the horizon continues to take up the attention of Canadian politicians. But the premiers seem to have differing ideas on how to handle Donald Trump's threat, even as the Trudeau government says Canada remains united. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has been tracking the story in Ottawa. Jeremy, what is the government saying now on this?
Yeah, Todd, Ottawa is pouring some cold water on what has been some heated talk. United are the premiers in their belief Canada needs to respond to the threat of tariffs. But they start to feel differently when it comes to what that response should look like. They all believe that the federal government should do something. Ontario Premier Doug Ford believes we could go as far as cutting off power supply to the U.S. Other provinces don't agree, and Canada Today, or the federal government, weighing in on some of that back and forth.
One should be careful not to confuse the odd public comment with what is a clear desire to work together with the government of Canada.
In the event that the United States were to impose unjustified tariffs on Canada, of course we would respond. And the Canadian response would necessarily be robust. I am confident that it would be effective.
Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc today presenting a united front, this Team Canada approach. They feel as though Canada is well prepared, and if need be, their response would be a proper one and one that would work. But it's clear the premiers have a difference in opinion here. Premier Doug Ford reiterated today he's willing to go as far as cutting off power, but it's not something he wants to do. He would rather see an agreement between the two countries before that. Todd?
All right, Jeremy Sharon in the capital. Thanks, Jeremy. Well, the potential financial impact of the Trump administration has Ottawa changing one of the rules surrounding Canadian pension funds.
This is an administration which openly has a strategy of creating economic uncertainty outside the United States as a strategy to discourage investment anywhere other than the United States.
Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland announcing the government will remove a cap that restricts pension funds from owning more than 30% of voting shares in a Canadian entity. She says that will make it easier for them to invest in Canada. It's one of a number of measures that will be outlined in Monday's fall economic statement. Lawmakers confronted the heads of Canada's largest airlines today. They were put in the hot seat to answer for some recent decisions that could force customers to pay a lot more for their next trip. CTV's Judy Trin now with what they had to say to Parliament.
In the new year, passengers will be charged for carry-on luggage on basic fares on all airlines. Air Canada made more than $2 billion in profit last year. Its CEO justified the new policy because others were doing it.
Travelers tend to prioritize the lowest advertised price, even if additional fees make the final cost higher. And small differences in pricing can determine whether we are considered at all.
MPs heard that now anything larger than a laptop will cost about $30 to stow inside a plane.
Why you'll be charging them for carry-on baggage that requires no handling by baggage carriers.
Passengers are paying for a growing list of things on flights.
For advanced seating, $15 to $80. Meals and beverages, earphones, $3 to $21.
The obvious question, though, is if you unbundle, then it should be at a reduced cost.
In the end, the basic fare may not be much of a bargain if you need something last minute.
They're going to ding you big bucks. And by the time you add up all of those little dinged things, it's going to be more expensive than an economy.
Meanwhile, WestJet CEO said if parliamentarians were worried about affordability, they should reduce taxes and airport fees.
Before Canadians even buy their tickets, government and third-party taxes, fees and charges can add up as much as $99 to a ticket price. This is more than 3 times of that it is in the United States, where similar charges are around $28.
The politicians want the airlines to open up their books and show them just how much money they're making from collecting these carry-on luggage fees and other add-on charges. The CEOs did not commit to doing so. Todd.
All right, CTV's Judy Trin. Thanks, Judy. The Trudeau government's temporary GST relief plan kicks into action tomorrow morning, but not everybody is on board. CTV's Scott Hurst joins us now with more on, Scott, who's giving the plan a thumbs up or a thumbs down?
Todd, the Liberals are calling this a much-needed break to take some pressure off your wallet. But on the eve of the so-called tax holiday, some consumers and a lot of businesses are skeptical on how this will all play out. Bottom line, starting tomorrow until mid-February, GST and HST will be waived on a laundry list of products. They include children's clothing, footwear, car seats and diapers, some toys, books, board games, dolls, and video game consoles, Christmas trees, as they are in high demand this time of year, prepared food, restaurant meals, both takeout and dine-in, and some snack items too. Also, beer, wine, and some other alcoholic beverages. So on these products, Canadians will save a few dollars at the till to help with affordability concerns. But there are quite a few exemptions, leaving businesses with a lot to figure out.
I'm a Canadian consumer and a mother, so I understand any kind of financial relief at a time like Christmas, but they just needed to do it themselves and not at the expense of small business owners at such a busy time of year.
In the provinces that have merged their provincial and federal sales tax, the entire HST will be waived on these items. For consumers, nothing needs to be done, Todd. The tax break is designed to be automatically applied at checkout.
All right, Scott Hurst with the latest. A first-hand account tonight of the moment that a driver blew through the border crossing into the U.S. It happened between Vancouver and Washington State, sparking a major police pursuit. As our BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson shows us, it's a day that one woman caught up in all the mayhem won't soon forget.
Khalip Singh was waiting in line at the border crossing between Metro Vancouver and Washington State on her way to pick up a package when the day took an unexpected turn.
I see in the rearview mirror this black truck just coming at me, right? And I'm like, what the heck is he doing? The next thing I hear is these screeching brakes. Like he was going at top speed and all you hear are brakes. And I'm like, my heart was racing, but I was frozen.
She thought he was a line jumper, so she rolled down the window and let him have it.
I said, what the F are you doing? Are you trying to kill somebody?
Singh says the driver ended up ramming an SUV in front of him, pushing his way across the line.
Alarms are going off. My agent was out. You know, there's sirens.
Police say the truck was stolen earlier in the day during a carjacking in Richmond, BC. The victim threatened with a machete. After the suspect made it across the border, what followed was a massive pursuit on the interstate highway. Police say the driver was all over the road.
His speeds were varying, ranged anywhere from 20 to 40 to 100 miles per hour. He's unable to maintain his lane position. He crossed over onto the center line.
Police eventually used a pit maneuver, ramming the vehicle, causing the driver to lose control and come to a stop in the ditch.
He is in the vehicle barricaded, not responding to command at this point.
The suspect was then arrested after a short standoff and identified as a British Columbia man, 42-year-old Sean Bergstrom.
Bergstrom was scheduled to appear in a Washington state court this afternoon facing multiple charges, but will now first undergo a psychological evaluation. His alleged brazen, illegal border crossing may raise new concern about border security, already a divisive issue right now between Canada and the U.S. Todd.
Absolutely. Andrew Johnson in Vancouver. Well, to Syria now, where many streets were filled with celebrations on a day being dubbed Victory Friday. The jubilation coming in the wake of the fall of the Assad regime. But for one group of Canadians still being detained in that country, there is not much to celebrate tonight. CTV's Adrian Gobriel brings you their story.
Fireworks illuminate the night sky over Damascus, putting an exclamation mark on a joyous day across central and southern Syria, as thousands celebrated the first Friday prayer since the fall of dictator Bashar al-Assad. While prisoners across parts of the country have been freed, it's a different story in northeastern Syria, where U.S.-backed Kurdish forces have imprisoned many with suspected ties to ISIS. It's also where rival militias are currently clashing.
The situation has, in many respects, now become a potential tinderbox.
It's here where 16 Canadians are believed to be currently detained, 7 of them children, 9 adult males. CTV's W5 recently traveled to northeastern Syria, where they were able to locate Jack Letts. Born in the UK, Letts holds Canadian citizenship through his father. He's been in custody for 7.5 years without ever being charged with a crime. Accused of joining ISIS, Letts now claims that he refused to join the terror group when he arrived in Syria. He's now pleading to be brought home.
I have no problem to go back to Canada now, and they put me in prison for 100 years and I die in prison, no problem.
Human rights lawyer Alex Neve traveled to Syria in 2023 with a delegation. He toured the prisons holding Canadians captive. This week, he wrote this letter to Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, demanding that captive Canadians be repatriated.
It is stunning, and I think for all of us as Canadians, disgraceful that in this particular situation, we have decided to disregard the international rules-based order.
In an email to CTV News, Global Affairs Canada says they continue to evaluate the provision of extraordinary assistance, including repatriation to Canada on a case-by-case basis. One retired Canadian military general says that's simply not enough.
We cannot monitor the situation. We have to engage in this situation with the United States, with the Turks. We've got people that are detained to get them out.
Human rights activists tell us if the Canadians being held in Syria are guilty, then bring them home and let them stand trial. Todd.
Adrian Gobriel tonight in Toronto. Thanks, Adrian. Mounting alarm south of the border over the mystery of drone sightings in the night skies.
Be straight with us and just tell us what is going on.
From New York City to Connecticut to Philadelphia, there are increasing reports of unexplained objects hovering in the sky. In fact, a naval weapons station in New Jersey confirming today that drones did cross into its airspace. The state's governor is calling on the White House to now get involved. All right, coming up for us.
This little girl deserves justice, and that's not what we got.
Outrage over a judge's decision in Saskatoon. Plus, a royal ruckus after a Buckingham Palace party. Billionaire businessman Frank Stronach has opted for a jury trial in his sex assault case in Toronto. A trial date is expected to be set at a hearing next week. Stronach was charged in Ontario's Peel region earlier this year with 18 counts, including sexual assault and indecent assault related to 13 complainants. The case was actually split into two proceedings in Toronto and the York region. The 92-year-old has denied all the allegations against him. It was an emotional day in a provincial courtroom in Saskatoon. The family of a young girl who was struck and killed by a driver were outraged at the judge in the trial. It came after that judge decided not to pursue the case against the accused. CTV's Laura Woodward with more.
It was a tense courtroom as a judge ruled to stay the charge against a Saskatoon woman who hit and killed a 9-year-old child.
Bailey Maurice was going to school on September 9th, 2021, pushing her scooter at a crosswalk on 33rd Street West when she was hit by Kennedy's truck. At the crash scene, before police read out her rights, Kennedy told officers she vaped marijuana and microdosed magic mushrooms the day prior. Kennedy was charged with impaired driving exceeding the prescribed blood-drug concentration of THC causing death. The judge ruled Kennedy's case was not handled within a reasonable time, prompting some in the gallery to yell at the judge, calling her a racist. Additional sheriffs were brought in as people continued to shout and the judge rushed out the door.
We're obviously very happy with the judge's decision to stay the proceeding for unreasonable delay. We've been saying for some time now that the trial has taken too long.
Matters at Canadian provincial courts must reach a conclusion by 18 months. The judge ruled Kennedy's matter took about 24 months. Even if the judge didn't stay the charges because of timing, the defense believes the case would have been thrown out over how police handled the investigation.
This was a prosecution that was flawed from the get-go.
And while the Crown did not speak to journalists after the decision, the defense says it's expecting the prosecution to file an appeal.
This little girl deserves justice, and that's not what we got. The court system is filled with nothing but systematic racism, not only towards the Indigenous community, but towards other communities of color.
And I want to believe that justice does happen, but on days like this, it's really hard for me to say that I'm a lawyer and that I'm proud of it.
The girl's family says they're bracing for another tough Christmas without their loved one, leaving the courthouse still searching for justice. Laura Woodward, CTV News, Saskatoon.
Still ahead, there is some promising news from the animal kingdom. Why there's now renewed hope for a species on the brink. Well, Buckingham Palace has launched an investigation after a member of its staff was arrested at a holiday reception. A member of the household staff was taken into custody following a drunken brawl that happened at a bar in London. Police allege a 24-year-old woman smashed some glasses and tried to assault a member of the bar's staff. There's new hope tonight for the survival of a very rare and critically endangered type of catfish. 6 of the giant Mekong catfish have been found and recently released in Cambodia. It revives hopes for their survival bigger picture. One of the largest freshwater fish in the world, the population, though, has declined by 80% in recent decades because of overfishing and dams. And an 18-year-old from India has become the youngest ever undisputed world chess champion. Here's the emotional moment when he became the winner.
Incredible, and Gukesh is also crying. Amazing. What a picture.
You can see Gurkesh Damaraju burying his face in his hands, crying tears of joy after winning the event in Singapore. He beat the defending champion from China in a best-of-14 series. All right, still ahead, a new Canadian world champion with bragging rights for an excellent expertise. You'll see what I mean in a moment. If you ever get tired of shopping, you might relate to this next video. It appears 3-year-old boxer Crystal had had quite enough and wanted to go home. The video was taken outside of a mall in Nelson, British Columbia. And if you listen closely to the video, you can hear other drivers in the parking lot howling, pun intended. A Toronto man can call himself champion of the world tonight. It's not for boxing or baseball. Rather, it's for Microsoft Excel, where he has been crowned the best of the best. Yes, you heard that right. CTV's Beth McDonnell has his story for us.
In the moment of victory, Michael Jarman leaps from his chair.
Michael Jarman! Look at that! Look at that! Win! Look at that!
Unseating the previous 3-time winner, he takes the top prize at the Microsoft Excel World Championship in Las Vegas. That's right, World Champion of Excel, the spreadsheet program which organizes and calculates data.
Starting to look like, is anyone going to ever beat him? So, yeah, it's nice to sort of finally dethrone him. And, I very much have wanted to win this for a while, so it feels great.
Jarman is British and moved to Toronto in 2017 with his company doing financial modeling for infrastructure projects, then met his fiancée. The competition is a set of unique problem-solving tasks in Excel which ramp up in complexity and involves getting the answer as quickly as possible.
You might have to model a card game like poker or euchre or baccarat. You might have to model a dice game like Yahtzee. You might have to sort of do something like Monopoly or traverse a map. The final round this year was World of Warcraft.
Jarman says the number of people watching the Excel World Championship is growing, and more people love puzzles than you might think. He points to all those who love a daily Sudoku or Wordle.
Microsoft reckon 1 billion people now use Excel. And I think, when people sort of go to watch sports, there's very few sports that 1 billion people actively play, right? So I think there is something that a lot of people can get from it.
Now it's just a matter of deciding what to do with his winnings, a $5,000 US check, and this large belt.
So I've honestly had more plans for the belt, which I think we're mounting on the wall somewhere. We're trying to figure out how to do that. Honestly, I've had more thought what to do with that because it's like I don't have a belt before.
Jarman says he's always had a knack for problem solving, and this win, all the congratulations and media interviews, has been a whirlwind. Beth McDonnell, CTV News, Toronto.
That is a big belt. That's the National on this Friday. I'm Todd Vanderhayden. CTV's Marcia McMillan is in tomorrow, and I'll see you again right here on Sunday night. Have a great weekend ahead.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.